Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Fondation Henri Cartier-Bresson, where we are currently showing Karim Kal and Mariana Kela exhibition, which will be closing this Sunday, so hurry up. I'm Chloé Remman. I'm the head of the Fondation Bookshop, and I'm really happy to welcome Bieke Depoorter tonight for our Feuilletage number 12. Bieke will be discussing Blinked Myself Awake, her latest book, which came out at the end of 2024. After a presentation, we will open the discussion to the public with a 15-minute Q&A. Bieke will then be signing your book in the bookshop. Before giving the floor to Bieke, a few words of introduction. Bieke is a Belgian photographer. She graduated with a master's degree in photography from the Royal Academy of Fine Art in Ghent. She has been a member of Magnum Photos since 2016 and has exhibited her work internationally in institutions such as the ICP New York, CO Berlin, the Photographers Gallery in London, and the FOMU in Antwerp. She has won several photography awards and has published 6 books, including I Am About to Call It Today, published by Édition Patrick Fray, which is now sold out, or the remarkable A, for which she was shortlisted for the Photo Book Award at Rencontre d'Arles and Paris Photo in 2021. Her new book, Blinked Myself Awake, has been co-published by Hannibal, and this book is true. The book begins with a series of images of amateur stargazers and then proceeds to tackle deeply intimate and personal issues. So I will let Bieke introduce it to us. Thank you, everyone. And Bieke, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me here in this intimate setting. I'm really happy to show the book in this way. So Blink Myself Awake. I'm not really calling it a photo book myself. I actually don't know how to call it because at first there were no pictures inside. So at first I thought it would be a textbook, or I have no idea. I don't mind really how to call it. I made it in a few years. I worked on it for a long time. It's a very personal book about a personal topic, and it's really a question, you know, when to publish something very personal. When are you ready yourself, or when is it ready for the audience, and do you actually want to show it to a public? So that was really a question I had. And then, so often on this book, I work on several projects at the same time. And with this book, I always had, like, during 5 years, for one month each year, I had like a tunnel vision to work on this project, and then I left it again for a full year. And then I didn't really think about it, and then I reread the text again, and this is how this book came about. Last year, I found out I was pregnant, and that's when I decided, okay, I should rush it. I really want to have this book out before something else is coming, something else personal is coming. So, Blink Myself Awake. I don't tend to say a lot about the pictures itself, so I'm going to leaf through the book, and I will start with reading a few texts. It's a book for my sister. It's dedicated to my sister. She's an important part of my life, and she's coming back into the text constantly. So it's dedicated to her. "1990s, in Gooichem, Belgium. It's hot, loud, and windy. I think I'm 7. A helicopter is circling above me and a dozen other children. Some of them are screaming because they are so excited. Some are quiet and nervous. We are impatiently waiting in a disorganized line for our turn to board the aircraft. Each time a child steps off the helicopter, they look so happy that the rest of us feel sure we're about to have an incredible, life-changing experience. I smell dry grass baked by the sun and see sloppy drunk fathers playing soccer while their children wait to fly. We are in a field behind the tavern. I feel both excited and afraid, worried I will forget the special moment. I know that after my flight, life will continue and I will likely forget this day entirely. I decide that I have to figure out a way to make this moment a memory and make sure that memory lasts forever. I see my uncle, my godfather, in his blue soccer shorts winking at me. He organized a special day. I watch the fathers running between the grey barricades that form their makeshift field. I look at my sister, my friends, the line of my friends yet classmates, the grass, the helicopter. Beyond the field, across the street, I see Blank, pausing to watch us from a distance while he walks his big brown dog. The dog pulls at the leash, wanting to resume the walk. I wave a small wave and turn back to the fathers chasing the ball, the spectating mothers watching with glasses full of white wine, cheering for their husbands. I see my proud uncle blowing his referee's whistle at the drunk fathers. I look back to the helicopter. It's going to be my turn soon. I try to look better, to see better, to notice everything possible as clearly as possible. I take a breath and promise myself I will never forget this unforgettable moment. As you can see, the images are all images of astronomers looking up. Most of them.
Uh.
2014, Steamboat Springs, USA. It's cold and snowing. I'm 27. My sister, brother, and I are road tripping around the United States in a red rental car. Every so often, I ask them if we can pull over so I can climb onto the roof and make a picture. I'm working on my second book. My sister is quietly reading in the back seat while my brother drives, enthusiastically pointing out sights in the landscape. My sister says we will only really know if this was a good trip once we're back home. She says that only once it's all over will we know the true nature of the experience. I tell her I disagree. We are having fun right now, and that seems more trustworthy than any memory we might have later. We stop at a restaurant with wood-paneled walls. It's warm and cozy, and we are sipping cheap beer from oversized glasses. A handful of old people are dancing on an otherwise empty dance floor, while a few loners on the periphery hope someone will ask them to dance. I think I should talk about it now. I think this might be the right moment. I hesitate, but I know I will have to tell them eventually. I begin by talking about our childhoods. Then I talk about my childhood. I describe memories and half-memories, some I have only recently recovered. I struggle to help them put together a puzzle in a few minutes that I have spent years trying to solve. I ask them if they remember the nights Blank babysat us when our parents were out with friends. My sister asks me how old I was when it happened. I tell her I'm not sure. She asks me how many times. I tell her I'm not sure. She asks me to describe details. I tell her I can't remember any. I want her to ask different kinds of questions, and then she does, asking if I'm sure of any of it. I leave. People coming and going hear me crying in the parking lot, but I don't care. I walk around the restaurant a few times. I sit in the red car for a while. No matter how hard I try, I don't remember specifics. I don't see details. I wonder if I did in fact imagine it. All I can see is his big brown dog. I have the impulse to drive away and disappear, but eventually I go back inside. My sister and brother are still there, waiting for me at the table, surrounded by wood paneling. We sit in silence, close together but not touching, and order more beers. Before we drive back to our motel, we dance on the empty dance floor. I will skip. 2020. It's completely silent and still, as if I'm inside a vacuum. I don't know how old I am. I see a man with a flat head. He looks hand-drawn with charcoal, filled in with watercolors. He has large weathered hands and a slender curved body. I can't tell if he's big or small, whether he's standing or sitting. He seems almost translucent. Tangled hairs grow out of his head in all directions. For a moment I wonder if I'm inside an Egon Schiele painting. The man tilts his head and looks at me with a gaze I do not understand. It's an empty but intense expression. We are looking to each other, examining each other. I feel curious but scared, wanting to know more, wanting him to know less. My left wrist is tingling. This sometimes occurs when I feel vulnerable, exposed, or hurt. I know I'm dreaming, and in the dream I'm worried I will forget the way this man is looking at me once I wake. I rewind, going back to his gaze. When I was a teenager, I figured out how to rewind my dreams like a film. I watch him, watch me again, then go back again. Over and over, I try to re-experience and re-see, but every time the dream continues, I'll still become worried I will forget. I'm stuck. I want to photograph his gaze so I can remember it. I suddenly have the idea that blinking my eyes in a dream might be similar to taking a picture in the real world. I rewind, but this time, when the man looks at me, I blink, and blink, and blink. Then I'm awake. I blink myself awake. So those are a few of the text, of the personal text I wrote. So I blinked myself awake. And recently, when I was making the book, I started to think that maybe that's why I decided to study photography, because I had the fear of forgetting. I never knew why I studied or why I decided to study, but I think I wanted to really document and collect proof. I think in the beginning, when I was 18, I really trusted in photography as a medium. So I think that's why I started to collect things with my camera. This book, as you can see, I leafed through a few of the pages, has images. So their personal texts are diaristic text. It's talking about my research. It's talking about me looking for a memory, a lost memory I don't have anymore because of a childhood trauma. And it's trying to, it's exploring how do you deal with that if no one is believing you, or if you don't have proof, and or if you even don't have a memory yourself. And then I also have historical text, text about astronomy. And those texts are talking about, those are in black here, and those texts are talking about a bit of the history of astronomy, and when photography came into this world, how it changed the field of astronomy, and how in astronomy also people try to find proof for their findings with or without photography. And these texts I will also read a few later, but I often highlight women not being believed, or women that I think we should highlight because they made men able to discover things. So I didn't know why I suddenly was so interested in astronomy at first. And it all began with meeting Henk. So this is Henk. So in 2020, when I was, it was COVID, it's not important actually, but when I was walking around my neighborhood, no one was outside. I was walking around by myself, and I suddenly saw Henk looking through his telescope. And I instinctively looked up too, and I realized I actually never look up myself. And I felt a fear while looking up. Henk showed me the moon through his telescope, and he invited me inside, and he had a lot of images of moons from all kinds of moments, and those images were even faded out already because of the light. I thought that was interesting to see. He didn't care. But I was really interested in Henk and the comfort he felt when he was looking up. And after I met Henk, I decided I wanted to meet more people, more astronomers. At first, amateur astronomers. Later, I also went to huge observatories. I didn't, so as I said, I didn't understand exactly why I was so interested, but I wanted to understand why those astronomers, how they could feel discomfort they felt. So I was interested of observing people observing. And that's why also you don't see many images of the stars in my book. So while I was looking at people looking out, more and more I looked into myself. And when I was looking at those people, when I came home, I started to write. And I started to write about this lost memory and researching this lost memory I didn't have anymore, and thinking about what photography means to me and what could be a way to remember, or what could be a way for us to remember correctly. So I started to write, and on a certain moment I realized things clicked, and I realized that looking at the sky might be similar as looking into the past, because the stars we see, it's from a long time ago that we see the light shining, coming to us. Maybe even millions of years ago that the light started to shine. And I started to see the sky as kind of, and the stars as memories. And I felt like maybe the sky is this kind of shared memory we all have, everyone is looking at. And me feeling reluctant to look at the stars is maybe because I'm afraid to see my own past. So this is how this book came about. So then I started to connect a few things from history as well. And I looked in in astronomy, how they used photography. So maybe I want to read one text I wrote about this. 1839, Paris, France. Over 200 people are packed into a courtyard, hoping to be admitted into the Parliament's building. There's a buzz in the air as the crowd speculates about Louis Daguerre's big secret. The scientists are excited. This may be a large leap forward for epistemological pursuits. The artists are anxious. Daguerre's new photographic technique seems capable of replacing their crafts. Rumors have been swirling for 6 months. The crowd, regardless of vocation, is running out of patience. François Arago, director of the Paris Observatory, is about to deliver a speech in which he will reveal the methods behind the reclusive inventor's new photographic process and how it is sure to change the world. This priceless knowledge is to be given to the public. In exchange for the patent, Daguerre will be awarded a lifelong pension from the French government. Arago will explain that the daguerreotypie, an easy, fast, simple, and trustworthy tool, will be capable of capturing a truthful likeness. People will no longer have to rely on hand-drawn depictions of the flawed images other photographic techniques produced. Photos will no longer fade. They will be sharp, allowing everyone to record what they see and hold on to that sight. The crowd will grow quiet as Arago shifts his focus. The invention will revolutionize the field of astronomy. Daguerre has made his daguerreotypie of the moon that was lost when his laboratory burned down earlier in the year. Arago will say more such images of the moon could be made, that the sun could be studied, along with distant stars, those whose light we see from Earth even if they burned out long ago. He believed the entire night sky could be mapped. He will urge the audience to use photography to answer questions about the universe that until now were unanswerable. So I started to see more astronomers, and I also met David in Belgium. And David was not only photographing the stars, he was actually putting an automatic telescope and camera there, and he was about to look at the images the next morning. I never really understood that, but he was, all the night he was drawing the stars. So he was sitting there in his seat in the dark, with a red headlamp on his head, and he was looking through his telescope, and then for minutes, very long, very silent, very still, and then he was just putting a little dot on his paper, as you can see here in the picture. He was drawing a circle, and then he put little dots up, and the dots were the stars he was seeing. And I really envied David. And I decided that I wanted to draw the stars too. So that's when I decided to go to, in the middle of France, to go to an astronomy farm. I went to the astronomy farm of Xavier de Beerst. And Xavier de Beerst is a photohistorician and an amateur astronomer. And I went there to draw the stars. I really didn't want to photograph the stars. And I wanted to see if drawing the stars would help me to remember better. So what happens if, just like David did, what happens if I look at the stars for minutes, maybe hours? Will I remember what I see better than if I would photograph it? So many things happened during that week I was there. Very confusing week, actually. I write about this in this text. But also on a certain moment, Xavier showed me something. I connected very well with him, and we were really talking about photography and the passing of time. And suddenly he showed me 3 huge books, thick books of the Carte du Ciel. And it was actually, so this is one of the cards that was in the book. So that he showed me a huge book, I think it was this size, 3 of it, with only photographic prints of plates like this. The most beautiful book I've ever seen, really. And what is the Carte du Ciel? I'm also talking about it in my book. The Carte du Ciel, it's, so after Arago gave his speech, and he said we could map the entire sky and maybe even count all the stars. About 18 observatories all over the world not in America, but they came together and they wanted to do a project. They wanted to start the ambitious project to map the entire sky. So each observatory, they were given part of the sky, and they thought that in between 8 and 10 years, they will be able to photograph the entire sky, map it, count the stars, and analyze it. So everyone started with the same telescope, same photographic technique, and the male astronomers, females were not allowed. They went outside and photographed every night they could. Female women were good enough not to photograph, but they were good enough to count stars. And they were called the female computers. And I talk about it, I talk a lot about them in my book, about the female computers who were counting and analyzing the data the men were collecting during the night. So I was very fascinated by this and by this book Xavier gave me. And actually, I went back to, after a year, I went back to see Xavier, and I traded my camera, or a camera I had, with those books. So now, those very rare books of the Belgian observatory I have now. And that's actually what you see in the beginning of my book, like the front pages here, and also here and here. Those are a zoom in of those prints I have. This is not an original. This is one I copied to Ring. After 70 years, almost 70 years, they realized that they would never be able to count the last star. And so photographic techniques developed. It became very expensive to continue this project. And of course, they could see more and more stars. And they gave up this ambitious project. And what is very interesting to me is that, it's also in one of the texts, is that those plates are not all digitalized. So there are many, so those plates, those photographic plates are in the archives of those observatories. And only those plates are actually showing some secrets, are actually showing that some stars were there that are now maybe disappeared. So that's for me very fascinating as well. So where were we? Yeah. So. Here, on the end of the book, you also see you'll see captions. So then you see what is actually what observatories I visited. I would like to read a personal text again. 2021, Chania, Greece. A sea breeze blows in through an open window. I'm 34. It's been almost 6 months since our first kiss. My boyfriend and I are resting in a bed in Crete, talking about our first date. We remember different parts of the same night differently. He thinks I made the first move. I think he did. He says that he wishes we could relive that night and see who's right. Without thinking, I tell him we can. He looks confused and I regret having just revealed a secret. I take out my phone and show him the large, disorganized folder of audio recordings I covertly make in my everyday life. It's a long list, hundreds of files over the past few years with names like psychologist, talk with Tom, conversation with mother, Christmas Eve, bank, Magnum chat, talk with Lua about work, meeting with anthropologist, reading to sister, car sale, conversation with Gideon about cosmos, family discussion. As I scroll, seeing the folder through his eyes, I realize how strange this habit is. Possibly unethical too. I feel exposed and ashamed. My left wrist tingles. I want to tell him that I have never listened to any of these recordings and never make them intending to do so. I want to tell him that I only make them because when I know I'm recording, it's easier for me to concentrate, to listen and be present. I consider explaining that it began years ago, on a day Blank was visiting with his big brown dog. I was feeling uneasy and started recording our conversation without knowing why, and I immediately felt calmer, more in control. So I tried it out in other situations, and it helped. Then it became a habit, something I relied on, something I needed. If there was a machine making the memory for me, a microphone or camera, I could relax. If I was recording, I felt an actor in my own movie, at a safe distance from myself. I avoid my boyfriend's eyes and don't try to justify my habit. I find a file from 6 months ago, 2020 11/24, 184812. It's almost 4 hours long. I remember grabbing my phone to take a picture of him, planning to also press the record button. I clicked play and we listened together. I fast forward until we hear the crackling of a fire. We were in my garden in Belgium when the first kiss happened. I knew I was in the middle of an important night in my life, and I wanted to be able to hold on to it, both in that moment and later. The recording plays the minutes leading up to the kiss. It turns out we are both wrong. (2021) Ghent, Belgium. It's cold and dry in the air-conditioned corporate office. I'm 35. The prospect of having this conversation makes me so anxious that my neck aches, but in some ways, I'm looking forward to it. I have brought along papers covered with handwritten notes, a careful chronological list of the few memories I can recall. I left some blank space, room for lost memories that might be found, or those I was too afraid to put in writing. My mother once told me that it's best not to keep a diary. She believed that if you do, what you write becomes fixed, unchangeable, something you cannot undo or take back. My sister is with me. She seems calm, but I suspect she's nervous too. I'm surprised and grateful she agreed to come. We sit next to each other at a large grey conference table. Her red notebook is in front of her, open to an empty page. She has carried a notebook with her everywhere her whole life, always scribbling something down. She once told me that she often uses keywords because all she needs is a single word to recall what her past self was trying to get her future self to remember. I asked the lawyer if I can record our conversation on my phone because sometimes in conversations like these, my listening gets cloudy. She nods, as if she expected me to record. I speak. She listens for a while without interrupting. When I pause or get stuck, trying to fill in the blank spaces on my papers, she waits patiently. The first thing she tells us is that we are brave. The second thing she says is that she needs dates, as specific as possible, because of various statuses of limitations. I glance at my sister's notebook, still empty. Again, I feel dizzy. I tell her that I did some research. He was in jail decades ago. He did this to someone else. We ask if she can help us access his arrest record, as that might help me trust my mind, to quiet our doubts. In a gentle but formal voice, the lawyer explains that the records are from a period when Belgian court administrators were using ink that unfortunately has faded over time. At this point, the dossier would be blank. So, maybe I can say something about the design of the book. As you can see, the images are printed on recycled paper. At first, so this book, it was very difficult design to make this book. At first, I didn't have photographs, and it was a very little notebook, like a diary. Then I had a few photographs, and then I decided that this should be the format of the book, the size of the book, which is a reference to the carte du ciel, that is also square. Also, I wanted to have the carte du ciel, the book that I traded with Xavier. Those plates were in between two cardboards. So that's why I also decided to have those two cardboards with a linen on the back of the book, because it's a reference to this three huge carte du ciel books. So this is why the size. Then I also didn't say, on the cover of the book, it's my own drawing of Alberio, two stars close together that I call my sister stars. And they are also, I talk about this in the book. So I made those drawing in the astronomy farm when I was there. And also in the back, there is a drawing I made of a few stars. So the design of the book, as I said, so you see that the photographs are printed on this very thin paper. At first, it was the other way around. The photographs were printed on beautiful, typical photography paper, Munken Links rough. Many photo books are printed on this paper. And the text was printed on the very thin paper. But something didn't feel right. It felt like people would really see this as a photography book. It drew a lot of attention to the images, but for me, actually, the core is the text of this book. So at the end, we decided to change, to totally flip it around. And we put the text on the photography paper, and we put the images on the recycled paper. Because also, I want to show that this is a research. For me, making those images was really research. I was looking to those astronomers observing those astronomers observing. And as you can see, that's also why I printed the historical text also on the thin paper, because I see this as part of my research. Also, those black pages, of course, referencing to the sky, but also to negatives or to glass plates. Where were we? Maybe here. I just flipped through it a bit quicker. I don't know where I'm. What time? I will read a historical text. 1894, Flagstaff, USA. A man looks through a telescope while sitting in a chair attached to an enormous wooden ladder. The chair is raised high off the ground. He is well dressed, suit, tie and hat, and has a large moustache. He draws a circle with dark spots and parallel lines on a piece of paper. In between peeks through the telescope and additions to his drawings, he checks his watch. He allows himself exactly 15 minutes to complete each sketch of the planet Mars. Percival Lowell created a self-imposed rule to keep his observations objective. He knew he could not represent everything he saw through his telescope, no matter how hard he tried, So to suppress his impulse to make improvements, he set a time limit that allowed the drawings to be standardized and comparable, more like data, less like art. These standards were not enough to convince the scientific community of the validity of his findings. Lowell believed he was seeing canals on Mars, proof that Martians were attempting to retain water on their dying planet. His colleagues will argue that he's a scientist with an overactive imagination. They will say he is an example of fate and desire eclipsing reason. In an attempt to win over his critics, Lowell will begin experimenting with a new method of recording visual data, thought to be more objective: photography. After many failed attempts to photograph the canals of Mars, in May of 1905, a photographic plate will emerge from the development bud at Lowell's observatory that proves he was right about the Martians. But when he shares the tiny images with other astronomers, they will deem them blurry, ambiguous, vague, and unreproducible. Later, when making a book, Lowell will request that a neutral party retouch his photographs of Mars to accentuate the details of the canals. His editors will protest, saying such an action would only strengthen claims that his work is subjective and unscientific. There would always be somebody to say that the results were from the brain of the retoucher. Lowell will allow the images to be printed as they are and continue investigating the mysterious canals. He will die never knowing that further analysis of his work concluded that the canals were likely shadows from blood vessels and other structures in his retina. He will have spent his life trying to convince others of the truth of what he saw, his own eye. So I spent a lot of time in Flagstaff, in the observatory, and also in the archives. And Lowell had made many, many thousands of images, amazing little images. It was incredible to spend time there. Images, drawings, little statues, little Mars statues, very beautiful. And this is the last text I will read, personal one. 2023, Tucson, USA.
Good.
It's cold and sunny in the parking lot. I'm one of the first people on the bus. I'm 37. I choose a window seat towards the back so I can watch everyone get on board, mostly enthusiastic men over 70 years old. Many of them seem to know each other and are happy to be reunited. The guide crosses names off a list every time someone enters the bus and hands them a bottle of water. I feel like I'm in a school trip. But I'm an adult, and my classmates are scientists here to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Vatican Observatory on Mount Graham. Once all the seats are filled, except the one next to me, a man with kind eyes asks if he can sit. Before I can say, of course, he tells me that I don't have to worry. He has a wife. I laugh, uncomfortable but not wanting to make him uncomfortable, and tell him he's welcome to join me. For the next 4 hours, Robert talks to me as if I'm just another scientist. He tells me that he's an optical engineer and software developer. He developed a code that maximized the suppression of stray light on the Hubble Space Telescope. I do not understand most of what he says, but I'm intrigued that he seems to know so much about sight and light, the human eye, and photography. He's an expert in how to create the best conditions for seeing and documenting stars. As the bus rolls up and down narrow mountain roads, I ask him if he trusts images. He answers by explaining that every night he sits down and writes about his day. For example, the Belgian woman on the bus will appear in his writings when he gets back to his desk later in the evening. He keeps these meticulous diaries because he's writing his memoirs for his children and grandchildren. He doesn't want them to have to rely on images to understand his life. We arrive at the observatory. I watch Robert all day. While everyone else photographs Mount Graham and the observatory's equipment, he doesn't take a single picture. Once we're back on the bus, he tells me that the only time he censors his writing is when he's in an argument with his wife. He never writes a bad thought about her. He doesn't want those situations to be misunderstood. I ask Robert if he trusts what he sees with his eyes. He says it's what we don't see that matters. He points to the window in front of us. Tell me, Bieke, what do you see now? I describe the sun shining off the metal telescope at the top of the mountain. He nods, but then points to the bus windshield, much closer to us, covered with dirt, grime, and greasy handprints. Did you see all that? So yeah, I also went to Mount Wilson. This is the telescope there, where Hubble actually saw that there's not only one galaxy, that there's more than the Milky Way. This is this telescope. So this is actually in the archives of, those are glass plates in Flagstaff. So you can, of course, wonder what happened to my memory. And while researching this, I think those astronomers showed me how to be comforted by the cosmos. And I'm writing about it here, but I also, by accepting things and by daring to look into the stars, into the past, memories came back. And then the book was almost finished. Was actually finished, so I was already working on the design when I found something. And I found this diary. I will go back to the beginning of the book. Here. So I found my diary. My diary back, there were, as you can see, I turned out a lot of pages because I was afraid about what I wrote, I think. I have other diaries at home as well that are very thin. So I found back my diary, and I don't remember this. But I found back when I was 14, I write about it here, but when I was 14, I wrote in my diary that I looked through my window and I actually saw the moon there. I never thought I was fascinated by it, but I write about it. I write about, I'm writing it here down. I write about my admiration for the moon. Then I go downstairs to grab my first camera, a gift from my father, and I take my first ever photo of the moon. In my diary, I explain that I want to try to frame the picture so the window is visible, including my handprints on the glass, the moon in the background. I conclude the diary entry by writing that I hope if someone ever secretly reads it, they will need to see the picture too. Otherwise, they will never understand how I felt tonight. So I really believed in photography back then. And on the end of the book, there's a picture of the front cover of the diary, and this is what it says. The concealed secret, the memory will not be gone for all life. Thank you for listening.